Football teams all over the country heading to fall camp this week, usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for just about everybody else, but Florida State's on the field in front of everyone else. So it's already been a week on the field for Florida State. Of course, Georgia Tech as well, but those are the only two power conference teams that tee it up in week 0. So we are 3 weeks away, folks. I counted it up when I promoted the show for X. 24 days, George. We got George Georgitis, the Renegade Report. He's here to break it down for us. George, how you doing?
Man, doing great. I got a litter of puppies that I've kind of told everybody on my channel about. I'm not sure if I mentioned them here.
No.
Taking care of those little puppies and trying to avoid the heat, but excited about camp, man. Really, really excited. You hit the nail on the head. We were talking about it off air. 3 weeks from now, we'll be talking about a game. It'll be 3-4 days away from a game in Ireland. Florida State fans have seen a ton, and I mean a ton of those Labor Day games, to where you have to watch everybody. Some teams play 2 games, be it week 0 and then all the week 1 games, and then you finally get to have your game. That is like, it's so, I don't know, I want to say nerve-wracking. You almost can't enjoy all the other games because your mind's just racing, running through. Like, you don't want to talk trash because this team got blown out because your team still hasn't played yet, et cetera, et cetera. So pretty cool to be the very first team, just the pure spotlight shined on Florida State football, and the added part of it being in Ireland. Just want to take down those Georgia Tech Boilermakers. Might have to check. I don't have a lot of information yet, but now that you mention it, might want to look into how their camp's going thus far as well. Start scouting the enemy here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, folks, we will attempt here in the next few weeks to find a Georgia Tech media member. I've got my buddy Joey Weaver, who's got a Georgia Tech podcast. He may not be able to join us on a Wednesday, however, so we're looking to find somebody here for the next few weeks to get the yellow jacket look. And we've talked about that a number of times where Florida State's done a nice job from a PR standpoint to put themselves all by themselves, either on a Sunday night, a Monday night, and this is then the entire week before, all alone on a Saturday. There's a few FCS group of 5 games, but this is going to be the game everyone's going to watch. So I just think that is a good move for the athletic department. You got to credit Mike Alford more than anyone else to say we want to position ourselves in a place where everybody's got to watch us the first weekend of the season.
Yeah, and a lot of that to do comes from the head office at the ACC. They have a lot to do with that a lot of times, like the Pitt game with Jameis Winston that was on a Labor Day by itself. That's an ACC game. This game here against Georgia Tech, obviously an ACC game to start the year. They obviously know who gets the ratings and who to place in these positions, but I digress. We don't have to get into all of that. But also, if I'm not mistaken, I could be talking out of my butt here, but I'm almost positive that we turn around and get a bit of a longer break before that Boston College game. It may either be on a Sunday or a Monday as well the following week. So ends up week 0 and week 1 both kind of being in prime time slots there. I could be mistaken on that, but y'all check me on that chat. But yeah, super excited. Everything out of camps. Excited to talk about it. We just went through pretty much every position, everything that I've heard, talking to everybody, stuff I've seen from studying the tape coming out of camp. So go check that out if you haven't got to. But excited to talk about it today, and super excited about it. A lot of spots. I think the kind of feeling around Nole Nation and especially the national media has been a bit of underestimating this team, a bit of nervousness, starting to drink the Kool-Aid, tell lies, whatever you want to call it. But the closer we get to season and the kind of word we're getting out of camp thus far, it's kind of checking all the boxes of the things you might have had questions about. And all of a sudden, this Florida State team really looks primed to make a run, and who knows, could be better than last year's team by the time all the smoke is settled with a little injury left.
We'll take your comments and questions there in the chat. We appreciate your super chat contributions as well here at the Voice of College Football. It's every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And so what are the nuggets out of camp?
What do you want to start with? You want to start with some offense, some defense? Line me up and set me free, man. There's plenty to talk about for sure.
Let's cut you loose on the offense.
All right, so we can start with quarterback, since I was just telling you before the show that I saw your program. He did a 15-minute clip with Logan from Knoll Game Day. Y'all go check that out. They did a nice little quarterback preview of this season and then kind of the depth of the room and moving forward. DJU, that's what everybody wants to know. DJU. How is he fitting in? Can Mike Norvell, have his best season yet? How high can he take the Noles? We've obviously seen how important a quarterback is with FSU just getting left out of the college football playoff with Jordan Travis going down. So quarterback, it's intrigue. It's what everybody wants to know. It's the most important position on the field. And now more than ever. You've always kind of said that, but back in the 90s and the 2000s, I couldn't ever imagine a quarterback going down and an undefeated team being penalized or moved out of the way for that. So it's a new world you live in. Perception is more reality than it has ever been. You have to have a perception you got a quarterback that can get it done. And thus far, coming out of camp, DJU, he is new. Like, he hasn't been here for multiple years. So, you got a guy like Brock Glenn who has looked a little bit better. He's been taking a lot of the first snaps and the different clips and things you see the first week out of camp. As DJU just gets into it, seeing all the reps just getting better and better. But as they got into pads, we're through 6 practices now. All the word coming out of practices, he's been steadily getting better and better. And then by the 6th practice, he was the best quarterback out there, had his best practice, of his time at FSU. There's a lot of talk about his inability to be accurate consistently. A whole lot of that has to do with his arm motion. A little bit of a hitch there in his giddy up that they've already shortened up. I think anybody that's watched it at his release, just in the little bit of time he spent with Mike Norvell, has been cleaned up a little bit. I think a lot of kind of his issues with inaccuracy and things like that at Clemson and Oregon State to a degree was maybe just not getting that much help from his offensive play callers. At Clemson, we all know they were hiring within. It almost felt like he was just a scapegoat at Clemson. You see them push him out, and then all of a sudden they just got worse. They did nothing but get worse. When you look at like premier games by a signal caller, playing at an above average level to win you games at replacement level. I think it was David Hale that did a big breakdown on this. DJU had 9 of those games at Clemson. Cade Klubnik has had 5. Out of like a very similar skill set. And we all saw what happened to Clemson last year. We'll see if they, go on a crazy playoff run and really Cade is the truth. But I'm really a solid believer that DJU just, was just failed by the people around him at Clemson. And then you go to Oregon State, you get this whole thing. He's a system quarterback. Jonathan Smith was just helping him out. They had such a great run game, et cetera, et cetera. But X's and O's over at 247 did a really good breakdown on it. They weren't throwing like his best routes or go routes, deep balls, using that arm, hitches, things of that nature. And those just weren't the top priority in that Jonathan Smith offense. It was he was throwing a ton of the balls that aren't really in his wheelhouse of throwing them. They had a safe offense that really relied on running the ball and things of that nature, but it didn't really tend or suit to DJU having a ton of stats and things like that. Still, he maintained a 3-to-1 touchdown ratio. And when you look at Clemson to Oregon State, it's literally the exact run to pass. So the kind of narration out there that that offense was just run, it was just play action and everybody was wide open and it still missed. Not exactly the case. They ran it just as much as Clemson. And he won 10 games at Oregon State. There's something to playing quarterback and winning games. Some quarterbacks put up a bunch of numbers and win 5 games, but the dude just goes out there and keeps winning. And I know that was a lot of hot air, not so much about what's going on in camp. But as far as in camp, the teams love him. And I said he's continued to get better and better and better, especially with this past practice. He's got a level of arm talent that did not exist within Jordan Travis. As much as he got better and better, he can throw those outs, those swing passes to running backs out of the backfield from the opposite hash all the way out to almost the sideline, and it's like a flick of the wrist. I mean, it literally is almost like a toss. I don't know if they're cutting out the clips where he misses, but there was one particular clip, it might have been the 5th practice, something like that, where he hit every running back. They showed the whole drill of that, from that opposite hash, and every one of them right on the money. From the 6th practice, we're hearing about just like legitimate NFL throws getting made. him making some throws that we haven't seen a Florida State, guy make in years and years. You're not hearing specifics. They're really tight-lipped about, certain routes and things like that. But you are getting that it's coming on. He's getting better and better. And I think, you might get a 3.5, 4-to-1 touchdown ratio. I don't think you're going to see this brand new DJU. But what you're going to see is Mike Norvell playing to his comforts, designing the offense around him, and really getting him comfortable early with all the different slot guys and running backs and things of that nature. And yeah, I couldn't be happier. Like on my scale of 1 to 10, on where I was like, is this thing going to work out? Is it not? Like if I was kind of half and half on how I thought DJU could be, I'm at a 10. Like I'm really happy with everything I've heard, and I think everybody else is going to be when they see him get to play against Georgia Tech in Ireland.
Well, George, you just heard this out of me because you just watched our video with Logan Robinson. So everyone be locked in over the next couple of days. We're releasing position by position breakdowns with Logan. I watched DJ Uiagalelei as much as I watched any other quarterback in the country when he was at Clemson. I was watching them almost every week. And this is what I saw was a guy that it was almost inexplicable that at the wide receiver position, Clemson went from having the best wide receiver room in the country to a very marginal one. And maybe he had a little to do with that, not having an elite quarterback like they did with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. But most of what I remember seeing was them very much letting him down. Just so used to watching those Clemson wide receivers high point the football, outfight defenders, just be elite guys that just would go up and get the football. And they were pretty bad for a few years there. They never did have a great pass protection offensive line. They were good. They won national championships, but that was always the weakness on the team, was the offensive line when they were elite. So then he bounced back from, I believe, 9 touchdowns and 10 picks that one season with Clemson to what you were saying there, a 3-to-1 ratio, something in that range with Oregon State in his last season with Clemson. And he's a big dude, and he's a former 5-star, and they are somewhat counting on him. I don't know how much of a consideration Mike Norvell would give to making this a true competition, but it doesn't seem to be that.
Yeah, that's a good question. We talked about that a little bit the other day. How good would Brock Glenn have to play to beat out a DJ Uiagalelei in this camp? Well, he'd have to be like, he would have to really beat him out. If we get into that conversation of Brock Glenn beating out DJU, it might be controversy. It would be like the top news of every college football show, but I'm here for it. That would be an awesome problem to have. I don't think you have an issue. I don't think you ever have an issue where DJU, his level drops, or he isn't able to play at a high enough level that it's like a problem. Like, oh shit, excuse my language, DJU isn't going to work out. We got to figure out if we can get Brock Blair. It's going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy could go out there and compete for a Heisman this year. How do we keep him off the field? Type deal. Jameis Winston, when he was at Florida State, he redshirted as a freshman, and then EJ Manuel was gone. It was his job. You had Jacob Coker there to battle with, but they didn't bring Jacob Coker in as a transfer. If they had brought Jacob Coker in off the street, in this new climate with his last year eligibility to be the starting quarterback at Florida State, who knows how that all would have went. It might have been for the best. Who knows? Maybe we win a national title with Coker and then with Winston the next year. But I digress. No, Brock Glenn, the rest of that quarterback room, it's a complete different level than it was last year. As you rounded out, DJU, just spent a bunch of time talking about him. I've spoke at length. I'm super excited. I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the nation by the time it's all said and done. I just don't know what Mike Norvell needs to show you more. You go back to ASU every year at Memphis, both years here at Florida State that he's had a quarterback, going into the season, and the stats, they're all very, very similar. It leaned a little bit more rushing more than any other quarterback he had with Jordan Travis, just because that's what he had Had to really leverage that offensive line with his running ability, with the running backs, things of that nature. This year, Florida State has an offensive line as we kind of move forward here to protect DJU and whoever it is back there at quarterback to a level that is just so far and above what we've seen in our time here. It's hard for people, I guess, to kind of wrap their heads around it because it's a lot of the same guys. It's not like Florida State never had that class with 4 or 5-star linemen. But what they've done is develop an offensive line into one that is just senior laden. We've got 8, 10 seniors in rotation of an offensive line with, we got 3 tackles of 2,000 plus snaps. We're 6 deep at guard with guys, all 6 of them better than anything we had on the team the first 3 years Mike Norvell was here. I love Dylan Gibbons. It's a different set of athletes lining up there at guard when you look at DeAndre Jones, TJ Ferguson, the different guys, Richie Leonard coming over from UF, a guy who is absolutely perfect for the scheme Florida State runs that likes pulling all those guards and running GT counter and all those things. So yeah, super excited. The young guy, Trevor Jackson, has came in. He'll probably be a scholarship player. Mike Norvell's always playing 3D chess. So you thought that was weird. You bring in a blue chip PWO and then you find out, oh, we're going to 105 scholarships. So I imagine as soon as that goes through, you're going to have Trevor Jackson on scholarship. Luke Crummenhawk, I saw you guys talked about if he could possibly win that backup role from Brock Glenn this year or what would happen next year. I think fat chance of it this year as far as Luke Crummenhawk, beating out Brock Glenn for the backup role. But that 2025 quarterback competition between Luke and Brock, yeah, that will be a ton of fun. The future is extremely, extremely bright for Florida State at the quarterback position and the offensive line position. It's all seniors this year. It's all seniors. But they've been able to really stack that young talent and really start to build it. I'm sure a lot of those young guys like Andre Otto, Lucas Simmons, those guys are going to get a lot of reps. It's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, offensive line and quarterback, elite play from the offensive line. And I'll say you get at least above average play from DJU. I don't see him at any rate doing any worse than he's ever done. And I'm pretty sure you're going to see the best year he's ever had in college football. Mike Norvell, just in the way he runs his offense with all the different running backs and things at wide receiver, it's just going to be a lot of fun to watch. You got also the fact of how the schedule lines up, I think is really big for DJU with him. He doesn't have a year to build up towards a run. He's just jumping in here 1 year kind of, whatever you want to call it, 1 year rental. Really has a month and a half to get the wheels going before you play Clemson, North Carolina, Notre Dame, these guys. So the sky's the limit. The closer we get to the season, the higher my hopes are for this team, for the offense, for the defense, all the way around.
The other thing with DJ that comes to mind that I failed to mention when I was talking about watching him play a lot of football at Clemson was he had 2 extraordinary performances in relief of Trevor Lawrence in 2020. One was a game at Notre Dame when he passed for more yardage than had ever been thrown for in that stadium. The other was a game where, of course, that was the COVID year. Trevor Lawrence didn't pass COVID protocol just 10 or 12 hours before the game. So suddenly he's in the game as the starting quarterback against Boston College. They go down like 28-6 in that game. He leads them back for a victory. So his 2 performances, his first year, were extremely positive performances. But then he's suddenly the starter. He's the starter. Lawrence is off as the number 1 pick. And that first game of the season, they play one of the best defenses we've seen in the last 20 years of college football. They played Georgia, and he didn't play well, but it's hard to tell how well he played because he had guys in his lap every play. So I don't know that he didn't play that well. He didn't have a chance to try to play well. That was one of those games where, man, they scored 3 points and Georgia just blew up every play practically. So they almost never had a chance to run a play. And sometimes for a first-year starter, you come out of the gate with a performance like that, and you're hearing footsteps maybe, or maybe it's just not a great setup for the rest of your season. And Obviously, he didn't come through the way he was expected to at that point, but man, he's a much different player today. You're looking at 2021, 24, 3 years later, he's still a starting quarterback in college football. He's got a ton of experience under his belt. It'll be interesting with Mike Norvell's skill set in this area to see what he can do with him.
Yeah, it's not easy to win 10 games in college football, much less at Clemson when you've got teams like Georgia and things like that, Florida State on the schedule. Go look at what games, in 2022 and 23, go look at what games DJU lost at Clemson and Oregon State, and then go look at the games that Trevor lost. Go look at the stats, go look all the way around it. Clemson, the coaching staff, everybody was just kind of like, no, the ride's not over. It can't be us. It can't be the team. It can't be all falling apart. It's just DJU. It's DJU. We're gonna get, but the way we do it in seniority, he should be Dabo had like this internal struggle going there. Putting Klubnik over DJU and that whole situation, kind of pushing him out, that went against everything that program is about. It was really kind of nasty. It was never spoken. Everybody kind of took the high road, but it's like everything that I've heard Clemson about, oh, we stay in house, we fix things, yada yada. No, he was the scapegoat. You say it how it is. And when he left, it didn't happen. Klubnik didn't come in and get better. It was the same thing that you got from going from Trevor Lawrence to DJU. Oh yeah, Klubnik was great in relief, but when it became his show, we saw it. We saw the blowout against Duke. They went 8-4. They lost to Miami for the first time, in a decade or whatever. It's been really tough beans. I'm all in on DJU. And again, Norvell's history speaks for itself. I'll put it this way: I think he's better than any quarterback he had at Memphis. So, in that time there, and also this is the best supporting cast that he's had around him by a long shot, in my opinion. We can talk about wide receivers a little bit. That's what a lot of people are worried about when it comes to him. But this offense is not going to be all about 4 wide outs and, go routes every single play. Like I've talked about, this is going to be probably the best running game that in the ACC, the best running game Florida State's had in a long, long time. They're going to run it a ton. They're going to hit a lot of wide receiver screens, short stuff. And they're going to hit play action. They're going to hit stuff over the top of people's head. They're going to really, really play to his skill set. They're going to play to Malik Benson's skill set, who has been the guy they brought in to be wide receiver 1. There was a little bit of a scare. He got dinged up in the spring, so we didn't see a ton of him in the spring game. But all accounts coming out of practice are that Malik Benson and that speed is legitimate. Like, he is that guy. He's been making some spectacular plays. Everything I've heard, how everything's going, he's locking down that wide receiver 1 position, and Florida State fans are going to be really, really happy with what they get out of him. Hakeem Williams, the true sophomore, top 100 receiver, coming out last year. Big guy, 6'3", 200-something pounds. Really starting to come along. He's my pick to win that other starting outside receiver role before it's all said and done. And he's right on track. He's done really, really well. You've got the senior guys and Darion Williamson and Kentron Portier, who they're really kind of steadying, kind of presences there in that room. I don't expect a ton out of Darion Williamson. He's kind of always in the right spot, but he has just had an issue with drops over his career. But we'll see how much burn he gets, but it'll definitely be good for that room. Portier, on the other hand, he could be he could have a chance to hold down that starting role as Hakeem comes into his own as the season goes through. He just has to stay healthy. Kentron Portier is a guy who really has all the skill in the world, has made some really good plays throughout his career. So you hope for him in his senior year and his final chance that he can put it together and have a really good year. As far as those outside guys go, you've got LaWayne McCoy and you've got Elijah Moore, who have come in as true freshmen and just absolutely lit up camp. Everything coming out of camp about those two guys has been amazing. Usually when you get true freshmen coming in a year like last year, we were a little bit more loaded at wide receiver. They're going to get a couple reps in there with the 1s and 2s, but then if they make a mistake, whatever the case may be, all right, it's off to the back of the line, back with the freshman, over to the freshman-only scrimmage, whatever the case may be. This year, the word out of camp is no. If they get something wrong, run it again. They may run it 6 times. But those guys are getting legitimate reps in the 3 deep there. and making plays on top of plays. You talk about 6'4", 200-pound beast of a man there, and Elijah Moore. And then the other one, Lane McCoy, I believe he's more 6'2", 6'3", more, of your kind of prototypical wide receiver number 2. So, yeah, really, really excited there as far as outside. Inside in the slot, you've got our guy, Ja'Kai Douglas, who was kind of the star of the Georgia game, the one kind of spark plug we had actually playing in that game. I expect him to do great things there in the slot for us. We've got, who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting somebody pretty big here. Anyway, a lot of good wide receivers.
Jaylen Brown?
Jaylen Brown, yes. That's exactly who I was thinking of. Jaylen Brown was a top 100 wide receiver with Hakeem Williams in that same class, that 2023 class. Went to LSU. He was somebody that Florida State really wanted. You end up getting him after 1 year at LSU, and he's another guy who can maybe do some of those plays, come and spell Malik Benson, run some of those go routes. Has really, really great speed and an elite skill position guy. Talent up and down the roster. We just don't have those jersey names. We don't have the set, guy that everybody knows going into the season, but we've got more talent. And this is a common theme across this entire roster. There's more talent in the wide receiver room than there has been in years and years and years. We just don't have the established name quite yet, but make no doubt, it'll step up. Somebody's going to step up. And also the tight end room with Kyle Morlock. He seems to have made all the steps necessary. The clumsiness, the kind of drops and off timing and things that we saw last year. A little bit of precautiousness there in his part on like blocking and things like that as he learned and went along. That's kind of just all went away. He's kind of like a veteran there in the locker room. There have been a couple highlight plays that have been caught on camera and put out on the public. So Morlock absolutely killing it in camp, along with the freshman Landon Thomas. I'm not sure if he's been dinged up or not. I haven't had quite as much out on him, but when he has played, it's elite traits. People have been really surprised by him. But the real big story at tight end out of camp is Amari Williams, the true freshman. He was a 5-star in the 25 class, moved to the reclassified to 2024 and was knocked down to a 4-star DN/tight end. Really looking like he might end up finding his home at tight end. They've talked about playing in both sides of the ball. But most of all the information we've got out of camp has been him lining up at tight end and just making grown man plays, like making plays we haven't seen from a tight end in years and years. And again, as a true freshman. But yeah, really, really probably make a mark there as a true freshman at tight end. There's a ton of skill to be excited about. There's no dearth of talent. There's just a dearth of guys that will make your preseason award list just because they already had the production from the previous year. But wide receivers, they have to get that production somehow. It doesn't come, is it the chicken or the egg? Okay, guys. Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman are gone. We got plenty of talent coming through. And I promise you, it's the best talent that DJU's had around him in his time.
So, George, when you run all that down, yeah, the wide receiver room is deep and talented, but there's just nothing coming back in regards to production. So, between Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, they were the two biggest pass catchers, and Jaheim Bell at tight end was number 3. So I see Porter caught 6 balls. Ja'Kai Douglas caught 14. But this is where you got to trust Mike Norvell and the coaching staff because there's a lot of development that goes on. Guys can be completely different players, especially very talented players that can take that kind of coaching, that kind of direction through an entire workouts, off-season winter workouts, spring practice, fall practice, all that, and come out and be ready to break through. The other part of this is, what is Mike Norvell known for? Well, he's known for transfer portal. You would think that if they needed a wide receiver or 2 in the transfer portal, if he didn't trust that room, he would have been in the transfer portal to get a wide receiver.
Yeah, facts. And look, it's fair. You can look at that. But at the same time, how many yards did Johnny Wilson have in 2022?
Sure.
How many yards? Keon Coleman had a pretty good season, but pretty comparable to the amount of stats Malik Benson had when he came in. So it's kind of that chicken or egg thing. Yeah, there's nothing to point to as far as proven. This guy, he's got all these yards, but the amount of young talent that you have there, you've got to be excited. There's a bit of trust there. It's got kind of one of those things. If you haven't been to a practice, if you haven't talked to somebody that's been, if you don't understand what's coming up, it's fair. It's fair to point at, but I guess that's what this show is for, to tell the people out there, don't worry, just because they're on a bunch of numbers out there. You'll see them after this season. We'll look back and see what the stats look like.
Are you a stats guy, George? For as long as you've been on here, I guess I should know.
I've got a good relationship with stats. I'm all for stats, but the problem with stats is people like to, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it myself. They like to look at a stat and make something that it's not. Stats are good for comparing things, for improvement, for trying to analyze stuff, but not a big fan of kind of how they get used. But no, I love numbers. Math was my kind of favorite subject in school growing up, so I really like looking at it. But what drives me crazy, like we've talked about it, like the blue chip ratio, like I've loved that. That was like one of my favorite things. But now you've got the transfer portal and all these things, and it's like now it just, to me, it boggles my mind that we would even pay attention to it. Like I don't, like why wouldn't you? Why would I be looking at, oh look, they signed 30 guys that were blue chip. There's only 5 of them left, but that means that they're a championship program, because it. Just little stuff like that, but that makes it fun. There's so many different ones. You could look at FEI, SP plus, all the different kind of stats that kind of rank people. You can get into all the different ones. Should G5 be in there? Should they all be together? But no, I like stats, but I like to hammer away narratives that certain people try to push with stats. It's like you can pretty much find a stat to say whatever the hell you want it to, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yes, you absolutely can, especially in the kind of arguments that college football fans have and that we have among teams and players that are comparable. Of course, you can find no stats that are going to make Vanderbilt look like the best team in the country. But yeah, we're talking reasonably. If you're trying to make a reasonable argument, yes, a lot of people love to use the stats that support their argument. They ignore a lot of things that don't. No, the reason I say that is, well, first and foremost, is I think the stats typically, if you're comparing teams, comparing players, that's the first building block that you start with. If we said, who were the best quarterbacks in the country last year? Well, we'd roll out their stats first. And obviously, if Jordan Travis threw 24 touchdowns and 5 picks, and I don't recall what his PD to pick ratio, that comes to mind. Maybe that was the year before. But anyway,
not far.
Let's say it was something like that. Obviously, if some dude at New Mexico State had 8 touchdowns and 14 picks, well, forget it. We're done with that conversation because the stats have told us. But obviously, the best quarterbacks have the best stats. But that's the start of the conversation. Let's roll out the stats. Where do they stand? Now, from there, then we start to bring in the narratives, the context. Who did they play? What kind of defenses? What kind of offensive line? What kind of weapons? What was the development there? Was this guy in his first year, his fourth year? All those things. So the stats is a good place to start. Obviously, anytime you compare football teams, the first stat, what's their record? You start there. But that doesn't tell us everything. Okay, how tough was their schedule? Was anybody hurt? All those sorts of things. But it's always a good start. The reason I brought it up here was it hit me. Do you have any interest in making stats predictions for this team this year?
Oh, we could do a little bit of that. That's fair. It's going to be really hard. Before we get into that, though, since
we don't have to do it right now.
I wish Chris was here, because there is one stat that he brought up to me that I cannot conjure for anything. But we were having a conversation the other day when it comes to wide receivers, as far as assuaging the fears out there about the lack of stats going into this year. If you look into the amount of stats that are like first year, like wide receivers of all the positions on the field, if you're going to have a player come out of nowhere and break out and get yards, it's wide receivers. Like the percentage of wide receivers that are young guys or first year starters and things and blow up, like try to think of all the players that you found out for the first time last year, and it's like, oh my gosh, like Eric A. Minor comes out of nowhere. Like he didn't have this crazy stat line leading up to last year, so that's what I would say there. But yeah, no, I've made a couple little predictions, like for DJU, for example. I think he breaks that 30 touchdown and 3,000 yards mark. I'll leave in there that we'll combine rushing and passing touchdowns. Maybe it's 26 passing, 5 rushing. But I think 3,000 yards, 30 touchdowns is kind of the benchmark there for this team to get where it needs to go. And I think that'll be a true test for DJU to get there. And I think he does for sure.
Jackson, thank you so much for posting the link to Amazon. Here's the deal, folks. We've got an Amazon link. It's in the description section of all the videos, not just on this channel, on every channel. And if you use that link, Amazon is still going to credit your account with whatever you purchase. Trust me. Trust me. And if you don't trust me, still try it out one time. And if there's any kind of screw up, then come back at me and let me know. But I have tried this with a number of people. I've had friends and family, because I certainly wanted to use them as guinea pigs before I would ever do anything like that to mess up your account in any way. But it tracks it, gives you credit to your account, everything. It works perfectly. Use the Amazon link in the description section. Hey, if you spend $100, let's say at Amazon, I'm not saying you're supposed to spend 100, but let's use that. Why not throw us at the Voice of College Football $3 or $4 out of 100 instead of 100 to Amazon? They're already worth $2 trillion. So there you go. So that's why we do that. It's one way you can contribute to the channel without spending a penny. So it's the same shopping experience. So Jackson, thanks so much for throwing that up. And we also have a sponsor we would like to introduce everyone to that has been sponsoring our shows this week on the national channel. And that is Chris Gates Fitness is who that is. He's got a special this month that everybody's signing up for, and it's called Training Camp. So here's the deal with Chris. He's a fitness coach. He's done this a long time. He knows what he's doing. And hey, you're into your football, of course, folks. You're fanatical about football, but let's take care of your body as well. So this is called Training Camp. It's a monthly fitness program designed specifically for football fans, and it's honestly like nothing else you've ever seen, because basically you get access to a website, you get access to Chris's coaching. He explains the regimen and the results and how it's going to work for you. You get a different workout program every day, so it stays fresh. And then the added portion of this is also the community that you get of sports fans and other people that are going through the same plan as you. So you can rely on them. You can encourage them. They encourage you. You push them. They'll tell you what worked for them. So you got the community involvement there as well. And again, the top-notch coaching from Chris. And they even have a community in regards to participating in challenges, win prizes, and more. And Training Camp is centered around sustainable results, no crash diets, extreme routines. It's going to last. You're going to see the progress. You don't need to starve yourself. Chris is telling me you can drink as much beer as you want, tailgate for the games, all that. Maybe within reason, maybe not as much as you want, but it will still work. And for this first month, you get a massive discount, $10 for the first month. And if you know anything about fitness apps, and I'm talking about apps where you just have, let's say, just a workout plan and that's all you get. No, you don't get the coaching, you don't get the community, and you're going to pay 50 or 60 bucks a month for an app. This one is $10 for the first month. That's 80% off the monthly fee. Again, it's Chris Gates Fitness, and it's called Training Camp. And please check it out. The link is in the description section of this video right there at the top. Also, George, the preseason ACC media poll came out. We've got Florida State on top with 81 of 170 votes. Clemson at 55, Miami at 17. I was unable to track down the final 13, so maybe, I don't know, SMU, NC State, Virginia Tech, somebody got 13. between all those teams, but it's a Florida State, Clemson, Miami race. It appears to be. The Vegas odds have been fairly even with a slight nod to Florida State, but it seems like the media is fairly confident in the Noles.
Yeah, more so as it seems like, along with what we've talked about and where we're getting back from camp, Vegas and the media slowly but surely warming up to the Noles as well. It seems like the closer and closer we get to the season. Seems like pretty steadily most of the people I've seen in the national media and the ACC media have us somewhere between 7 and like 13 as far as being ranked nationally. And as you pointed out there, pretty good majority. It wasn't a blowaway, but 80 to 50, pretty good margin there as far as the preseason poll to win the conference. Not that I put any faith in those people whatsoever, because it's been really bad. I don't know. They might have did pretty good this past year, but when I used to keep track of it and really look at it every year, it was like ungodly how bad. I don't understand it. How they could be that bad at it, but I've never tried it either.
You're
So
taking us,
not gonna knock
George.
it.
I'm sorry, George. You're taking us exactly where I was going to go with that, because I would love when they print these articles with the preseason predictions for these media for all the leagues. I want to see what the track record is. How well did they do last year, the year before, the year before, the
Yeah.
year before? That stuff just disappears. And you gotta like Google page 17 of ACC media days from 2021 to figure out how they do that year and keep track yourself. These articles should keep track of it for you.
It's so reactive. Like, it's almost like they watch no tape and they just look and, oh, Georgia Tech was 3-9 last year, put them at the bottom type thing. Because, like, consistent with that, what I've seen over the years, Georgia Tech is in the bottom 3 of like all these polls. And I'm like, I don't like, yeah, sure, they had a bad year, but it's Georgia Tech. They were like going from an option that to a different coach. That didn't work out. Now they got Brent Key in there. He's got a pretty darn good quarterback. His offense looked better than just about any damn body against Georgia all year last year. I think they're going to be pretty good. As much as everybody wants to think this is going to be an absolute blowout, I've got Georgia Tech more 8 or 9 in the conference than 16 or 15. I'd have Cal and Stanford and a couple other people down there. I haven't looked at Georgia Tech's whole schedule, but it's really hard. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's easier now in this new era. We did away with divisions last year, and that really changed the schedules. Used to be the Atlantic was a train wreck. It was pretty much a round robin of the 6 best teams in the conference. You didn't really know. You knew Clemson and Florida State was going to come out. How the rest of them finished, who knows? Same with Coastal, except for they were garbage. Whatever. This crap's going to get stacked up one way or another. We just don't know. Now, when they drop the divisions, okay, the schedules are evened out a little bit. You can tell this guy with their schedule, they may finish 3rd. They don't play anybody big. Adding Cal and SMU and Stanford has taken it to another level where it's really Virginia Tech might as well play in a different conference than Florida State. Syracuse might as well play in a different conference because the schedules it's like a G5 schedule. It's nuts. I think we've talked about this on here before, but they miss everybody somehow, some way. And it's like similar to what Georgia had for their schedule last year. That did not look like an SEC schedule. It's like, whoa, what you don't play anybody. Where's the you don't play Alabama? You don't play LSU? You don't play it's like Georgia's down, this team's down. Tennessee was supposed to be good. They dropped the ball. The scheduling these days has become pretty damn uneven. So it's kind of hard in that tack. But yeah. Anyways, I think Florida State wins it. I think Georgia Tech's a little bit better than they're being credit for. I think SMU is getting a little bit maybe more hype. Like, I think people are really hyped up for them. I'm not hating now. They've got some talented guys. You get excited about these names and things like that. But we'll see. The first year in these Power 5 conferences, as much as people want to look at, the ACC ain't this and ain't this. Well, it ain't the Sun Belt and it ain't the AAC either. So we'll see how SMU handles it and their schedule again. Maybe it stacks up where they can get through it. But certainly right now in the ACC, all schedules are not made equal. And the problem is having 17 teams, but your top 3 teams are locked into these annual traditions. So when Clemson has Florida State, and I don't even know, North Carolina, whoever they have that they play every single year, well, those
Georgia
are three
Tech.
of the best four teams.
Yeah.
And Virginia and Cal and whoever else, Virginia Tech, they might not play them ever hardly, or every 3-4 years they play Clemson and Florida State. So it's I'm happy for it. Don't get me wrong. I want a tougher schedule. I'm for it. Ours plenty tough. I don't want to not play any ranked team all year. We'd never get in the playoffs. But you get to the end of the year, it's going to be aggravating if Virginia Tech gets in, we'll say one loss over, Florida State's got 2 losses. Maybe they handed Virginia Tech that loss, but they still don't get in because they didn't play anybody type thing. So we'll see.
Well, as I understand it, it should even out going forward, almost even out, because to your SEC point, the problem in the past with the SEC and the ACC was that obviously the Atlantic in the ACC was so much better than the Coastal. You had the 2 best schools in the Atlantic, plus you had a strong Louisville much of the time. You had a strong NC State much of the time. Even Boston College and Syracuse and some other schools at times would pop up and be decent. Wake Forest, of course, under Dave Clawson has had a pretty good run of 7-5, 8-4 teams. So no comparison between the two. The issue was that if you're Florida State, you play Miami every year, and then the other game rotates through the division. And so you see the other 6 teams only one at a time, and it takes you 6 or 7 years to get through the rest of the division. The SEC was set up the same way. So if you were Ole Miss, you're lucky because your designated team in the other division is Vandy. If you're Auburn, your designated team's Georgia. You have to play Georgia every year, plus play Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, and all those teams in your division. So yeah, it was awkward and not fair. Now the way they got it split up now, as you well know, George, everybody's got their 3, whatever they call them. They're basically protected games. They're rivalry games.
So I'm making the case that here we are, we're right back in the same exact spot as we were before. Due to them adding the 3 teams, having the 3 locked in rivals. The difference is you don't have that gauntlet. That's gone. You don't have the gauntlet of Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, NC State, all literally playing each other in a round robin every year. That goes away, but they got diluted to such a level by adding Cal, SMU, and having only an 8-game schedule and 3 locked in. What happens is, like you mentioned, it's right back to that thing. If you're Georgia or you're Florida and you play Alabama and Tennessee and whoever else every single year, that makes it tough. That's what you got going on now. Because Florida State, they play Clemson, they play Miami, they play yada yada every year. Clemson, just because of rivals, they play NC State, they play Florida every year, and it's the same thing with those top 4 or 5 teams. They all play each other. So the bottom, 13 teams in the conference, Virginia, all these other teams, they miss them. Like they may play them next year, but then they won't play them again for 2 years. And I got the schedule up right here. I'm going to read some of it. And it just goes to show because, like you said, it should even out, and it really would have done good with 14. But now that you've ratcheted that number, it's like moved it down years. Like that's a whole nother year. You don't see Clemson because now SMU and Cal is playing them instead of you. And like I said, they're all playing it every year.
Yeah, you're right, because my final point was going to be before they expanded to the other 3, that even though it was still going to be somewhat uneven because they gave Miami and Clemson to Florida State, and it depended on who they wanted to make your protected rivalries. Obviously, they want North Carolina and NC State are going to play every year, et cetera, that the rest of the league was split in half, and you played half one year, played half the next year. Then you went back to playing that half. And then you went back to, so everybody for those non-3, for the other 5, you split back and forth. But then they add these other 3 in. And I got to tell you, I don't remember what they did after they added those other 3.
Yeah, I can't be totally, if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not sure exactly how they worked it out. But yeah, they kept the 3. I think they pretty much just added it to the pool. But when you look at these schedules, I mean, it's Virginia Tech, they get, or let's look at here. Which one was it that was just egregious? Virginia. Boston College, Louisville, North Carolina, SMU, Clemson, Pitt, Virginia Tech. That's a pretty tough schedule. Well, at Syracuse, who is just the same exact program as Virginia, they get Georgia Tech, Miami, Stanford, Boston College, Cal, NC State, Pitt. Let's see here.
I kind of look at it, George, from the other way. Like if you look at Syracuse, who don't they play? They don't play Clemson. They don't play North Carolina. Who else is good that they don't play? They don't play Louisville. They do, Syracuse doesn't play.
The top, they do.
Syracuse doesn't play Clemson or Florida State.
Yeah, they miss Clemson and Florida State.
And they don't play Louisville. And they don't play North Carolina.
Like, how does that happen? Is my question. Like, how do you split it up and that happens? Like, if that happens once every 10 years, that's like just a fluke schedule. But no, what happened to me is I seen one of these schedules and I was like, oh no, a lot of people have schedules like that. Like, ooh, I mean, Virginia Tech has to play Clemson and they've got to play Miami, but they scheduled nobody out of conference. And they get Boston College, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Duke, Stanford, and Syracuse. I mean, that's 5 dubs, like as long as you just show up and roll your helmet out there. You look at Florida State's schedule, it's not like murderer's row or anything, but you get Clemson and you get Miami like you do every year, and you also get North Carolina, and you also get SMU, the better of the teams, to jump in. It's like, I don't know. Luckily for Florida State fans out there, we don't have to worry about this too much longer. Only 2 more years, 3 tops, and we'll be out of this thing. If you can tell, I'm just not a fan of them adding Cal and Stanford. SMU one, like, you could have convinced me that one. You could have brought them in with maybe somebody else that was a little bit better. Maybe if you brought them with an Oregon State or something, I would have been happy. But just to the level and the degree that Stanford and Cal drag down the strength of schedule, and again, as we talked about with those home guaranteed games every year that Clemson, Florida State both have, it's really unfair to the teams that don't have to play Florida State or Clemson, and then the poor schmucks that get stuck playing them both. It's really unfair for them.
Yeah, that's a huge. If you're the Virginia level team, and I don't know who does and who doesn't, but like George said, some do and some don't in terms of playing either none of them, or basically Clemson and Florida State are automatic losses. So you're giving them an 0-2 record in those 2 games, or for somebody else who you're competing against as a like bottom of the barrel team, they don't have to play either one. So at least they've got 2 teams in place that they can beat. Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. It could be done better, but with 17 teams, that's kind of difficult to do.
Yeah, that's the issue. Yeah, 17 freaking teams. It's like it's just a dilution. It's not like they added competitors. The thing with the SEC and the Big Ten now is they did away with this because they added national contenders. So now there's more guys. All of a sudden, if Georgia isn't playing Alabama that year, okay, well, they're playing Texas or they're playing whoever else. Adding worse teams when your problem is that you're already a 2-team league, it just makes everything that much worse. It's like,
you want me to play devil's advocate before we have to go?
I'm for it. I ain't got nothing going on, man. But I know you got the Miami show coming.
If we turn back the clock 10 years, who was a top 5 program in the college football?
If we go back 10 years,
who
Clemson and Florida State were both top 10 at that point in time.
Yeah, but who that was added to the ACC was like a legitimate top 10 at the worst.
Stanford for a couple of years? That was more like 12, 13 years ago, though.
Well, I said between 2010 and 2017, that's 8 seasons. Stanford was a legit top 5 to 10 team in the country. So they could be that.
Yeah, they could. I've always wondered that. I wondered why it dropped off a cliff like that. Like, it is wild how fast David Shaw got in there, and he rode it for a couple years, but when it went bad, it's like they never even tried. It's like they just got lucky and got Harbaugh in there or something. Like, how did that hire even happen to start with? Because how did they satiate that guy for 8 years with their level of interest? Maybe they just left him alone, and that's why he was able to stay there so long. Maybe they were just like, whatever,
Well,
do your
Harbaugh wasn't there
thing.
for that long. David Shaw was there.
I guess it just, I guess, yeah, you put the 8 years together. How long was Harbaugh there? 4 or 5
Harbaugh
years?
was there. Harbaugh lifted them to a BCS level, and then he was gone to the
Mhm.
49ers. And then David Shaw took over in like 2012.
I knew it was back in those days. It's just a little shady. I guess he left when Andrew Luck left, and then Shaw took over with Hogan. At least
Yeah.
something like that was how that went down.
Yeah.
But yeah, they could. We'll see what happens. But it's been a pretty embarrassing
For those
go of it here as of
8
late.
years, they won a couple
SMU,
Rose Bowls. They won an Orange Bowl. They were really good. So things can change.
things can change for sure. There's no doubt about it. Just like you can change your conference.
All right, George. Appreciate you being here. Let
Yes, sir.
everybody know what's going on at the Renegade Report.
Oh yeah, we're still doing 4 shows a week, 3 shows a week sometimes. We've been taking off one of the shows here or there, but it's Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. Mondays the Renegade Roast. The rest of the days are the Renegade Rundown, where we just talk Florida State football and all the very latest news. On Mondays at 9:15, that's when Jen and Tiny Hat just they have fun. It's a roast like you think. We roast football analysts, football players, ourselves, all of it. They just have fun. So yeah, check us out there. Like I said, we did a full breakdown of the entire, every position group yesterday on our channel. That'd be fun to watch. I got kind of long-winded, so we didn't even get to running backs on the offense today, but that's fine. We'll hit running backs and defense next week. See how things are going. But yeah, just make sure you guys go over there and subscribe at the Renegade Report. Every subscription is like huge for me. Trying to get to 3,000 or 2,528, I believe, right now, and trying to take it to the next level. Thank you, Mark, and let's keep it going. Go give those Miami guys shit, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Everybody here should be subscribed over there as well. So the Renegade Report, and then join us on the Miami show right now. Thanks, George. Appreciate you being here.
Yes, sir. Go Noles.